As I said in the previous clip, we are going to talk about some issues, and the first issue is that at some point in time, depending on the district of residence, you are going to be asked by your friends and society protectors, the COPS, as seen in the picture in the right of this slide, of course accompanied by the men in pink, such as BSA, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, etc. The names depending, of course, on your country of residence. Of course, they are going to ask you about the origin of provenance for the software you use, and especially when you haven't wrote it yourself, it does become a nuisance when you need to explain how it got in your computer hardware while not having the adequate proof of purchase for it. This applies to other type of media content, not only software, of course. As a quick crash quiz I can think of for this presentation format is when you don't know what a programming language is, you definitely didn't write it, and we can move on to the next order of business. Of course, this applies to any other type of media content. If you didn't record it, if you didn't draw it, if you didn't took the picture yourself with the right approval, you don't own the rights for it. As a very important fact that needs to be presented is that there isn't such thing as no copyright song or material. Everything is copyrighted even when the author does not register the work at a copyright office, because that's how the copyright works legally, and who says otherwise lies and commits felony. We are going to talk about two types of licenses that we're being interested in, which are the standard and the free licenses. So the standard copyright license, which is notated with a C in a circle or a P, depends on the type of media, followed by the quote-unquote all rights reserved sentence. In this case, the original producer of the copyrighted work has the right of life and death of the said work in front of the law, at least in the signatory nations of the Berne Convention. On paper at least, but depending on of the level of bribery, corruption, and businesses intertwined at the high level of the government in the said countries or nations, the rights for the owner of the work can be full or partial. And in court, the decision depends on a mix between the personal and professional opinions of the judge, jury, lawyers, past and current lawmakers, corporations that have the most influence in such decisions, and in some cases the general public, the latter not having too much weight in the decisions unless united and in a massive amount of individuals. Of course, the last category also kept the creative license going when they took the risk to protest. The standard copyright license offers licenses which offer specific rights of use for the works, and two of them are the most important, the rest being specialized derivatives from those two, and are as follows. The first one is the NDA, which means non-disclosure agreement, and EULA, which means end user license agreement. The NDA is, as stated, an agreement of non-disclosure of information discussed or related to the copyrighted work between the parties involved, and the only pertinent use of such license is found in the departments of defense of a nation and in some commercial departments, in which case should be used for some limited time, I can't stress that enough, to just give the company or person a fair advantage of building a customer base ahead of competitors on the same product or service. This doesn't, of course, apply in the Department of Defense of obvious reasons, because people's lives are directly at stake. The EULA, on the other hand, when most of the time is misused, as the NDA for that matter, can be and usually is a camouflaged NDA that you get to read its terms after you paid the goods or entered the service subscription, without many alternatives to get out of the agreement because of the conditions stipulated within. And of course you read it after you buy the product, so it is considered signed and agreed. This type of agreement, of course, can be disengaged in the court of law, but the lawyer fee is usually significantly prohibited for the general public. The part that makes EULA very dangerous is the fact that the licensee does not have access to the EULA's terms before opening and thus unsealing the product, which in the case of software it is considered signed and of course agreed once the package was unsealed. Obviously, this is an unfair treatment for the citizens of any country or nation that call themselves civilized and properly governed. There is, of course, a third type of license, which is a specialized copyright license. This type of license is usually found in personalized contracts that are not general and fit a special purpose between the parties. These are those type of contracts that are on paper and are signed by the two parties, and they are read first by the parties themselves and or their attorneys. These are usually negotiable between the signatory parties, unlike the two mentioned earlier, of course, EULA and NDA, that can be revoked by the licensor at any time. the contracts cannot be revoked that easily, but a EULA or an NDA can be revoked by the licensor whenever he/she wishes. That's another reason why EULA and NDA are very dangerous to get yourself involved in one of them. As an example that can be given in this presentation format would be, for the paper contracts, would be the collaboration contracts between professional musician or other analogous types of collaborations between different parties. Of course, these have their own defects also, but that's another can of worms, which probably is going to be discussed in another video in the future. This type of license belongs in the same realm as the standard copyright. As a warning, I can't stress that enough, you do not have the right to relicense any of these works under other types of licenses such as Creative Commons or GPL licenses unless expressly written by the original author and or rights holder. If it is the case, you need to have a recorded written proof of these clearings. Thus, it is a felony and a sabotage to the free licenses when you are not clearing your derivative work, so it doesn't have copyrighted work that you are not allowed to use. So, since the standard copyright governed most of the time since the Berne Convention, around the 80s a solution was found to the unfairness of the standard copyright licenses with the proposal and inaction of the general public license with its later improved versions and variations from it, accepted by the Free Software Foundation, of course. This was a solution for written specifications such as source code based goods written in plain text. An example being plain old PC software. Basically, the license clearly and legally states in general human readable terms that the software can be redistributed with the accompanied source code. Thus, the modified versions of software benefit from the same terms and conditions. The last version at the uploading of this video is version 3.0. Of course, this was not sufficient. The GPL was not sufficient for any drawings, yes, even CAD drawings. Sound, yes, even projects made in a digital audio workstation software. And motion pictures, even computer games. The only thing that escapes this ordeal is the listing program for CNC machines such as .nc files, because that is plain code. But we are going to see throughout this video that even this is not the case. Of course, somewhere in the year 2002, the Creative Commons license was conceived. It works for everything that is drawn, from CAD pictures to DAW music and film projects until plain old motion pictures. For a clear understanding of how Creative Commons is split, the following parameters are added after quote-unquote Creative Commons words, or the shortened quote-unquote capital C, capital C. Also, the reversed copyright logo, which is the capital or lowercase c, left flipped in a circle by the words quote unquote followed by the words quote unquote some rights reserved, of course followed by the Creative Commons license type used may be encountered. The CC parameters are as follows. You have CC followed by a 0. Of course, this is the holiest of them all because the original author gave almost all rights to whoever wants to use the work. The work can be used without mentioning even the name of the author, can be used within commercial environment, no royalty payments of any kind must be made to the original author or the rights holder of the work. This one resembles public domain almost, but it has only one condition, which is as follows. The licensee must not attribute the used work as created by self and or restrict the access to the original work by any means, be them legally or technologically. Of course, this one, as we said, we are going to talk about the sabotage that can happen with these free licenses by the standard copyright adepts. This one can be sabotaged by the standard copyright adepts by using works without giving back anything to the community, but they can be finger pointed and judged by the community because of the nature of the terms and conditions. It naturally selects pigs from people. Of course, a solution would be for the community to implement something equal to Shazam or the YouTube's copyright ID system without the problems that these systems create. The next type of Creative Commons license parameter is CC-BY, which means Creative Commons by attribution. The work is released by the original author or the legal rights holder, and the right of distribution and modification for any purpose is granted, as long as the author is mentioned in a form or another in the modified or derivative work. Optionally, I can't stress that enough, you can include his or her links to different sites where the work can be found in the original form. I am saying this that you will need a minimum of one address, but you are not forced to point to their Instagram or to some type of social platforms that you morally don't agree with. You just need to have a link of the name of the author, of the name of the work, and at least one valid address, be it internet or otherwise, where the work can be found in its original form. This transfers to modified future works by others in a sequential way, just like a very long chain of attribution information history. So the same type of Creative Commons license transfers with some conditions that I will explain later in this video to the next modified work. Of course, this license can be sabotaged also because it allows almost all the freedoms, but it selects animals from people because it forces the author's attribution, and can be of course judged by the people in the future, more probably, and in front of court this time, if someone failed to attribute an author. Believe it or not, there are legal consequences when you use licensed work covered by this type of free licenses, because the free world needs also to be protected. The next type of license parameters of the Creative Commons are -by followed by -sa, which means Creative Commons by attribution, share alike. The work is released by the original author in this case, or the legal rights holder, and the right of distribution and modification for any purpose is granted, as long as the author is mentioned in a form or another in the modified or derivative work, and the same original rights are given further to the rest of the recipients. Of course, in a more and more heinous world, this type of license is needed because it forces not only to attribute the author, but also to share the modified work and or the original artistic work free of charge. Of course, if somebody just give you money, you are not forced not to take the money. Of course, this one gives the original author the right to the possibility of being mentioned, aka attributed, in the new work, and the new author that modified the old work and transformed it in the new one is being given in the end the exposure for the creation of the new work. Basically, if someone finds a work with the from the Creative Commons license with the by-sa attribute, the work based on it must be attributed according to the origin of provenance, shared free of charge by default, and access to it must not be hindered by any legal or technological means. As I said, optionally, money can be taken if someone just wants to give them. It just can't be forced upon, that's all. So as we see, even this license can be bent in a mutual favorable ways, stretching the limits a little. This one can be less sabotaged because of the conditions put in place by the -sa parameter, so that the standard copyright adepts cannot take something from without putting something back, at least of equal value. The next type of parameters of the Creative Commons are the cc-by-nc, which means Creative Commons by attribution, non-commercial. This one changes the pig's role a bit, but let's move on. Basically, the work can be modified by the licensee, but attribution of the original work needs to be added, as in the case of the others. And this is the important part: the licensee is not allowed to receive any monetary fee or reimbursement for the modified work, at least in the last version, which is 4.0, I believe. But the original author can use the modified work to gain monetary advantage, as of course it's original work. So this one basically gives the original author all the beans while the crowd gets a swollen lip, I suppose. So in conclusion, the original author can still do whatever it wishes with the work and all its derivatives, including your derivatives. Did I mention about a swollen lip somewhere? Well, I did now if I didn't. This license was made specifically for those already in the copyright standard realms, so that the rest of the people can taste musical or other artistic materials without getting fines or be put in prisons. The next one is the CC followed by by-ND, which means Creative Commons by attribution, non-derivatives. This license allows distribution of the original work if the original author is attributed, and the original work must not be modified in any way. This was meant for the official and non-official statements to not be split in such a way that the context of the statement as a whole is somehow lost intentionally or not. An example could be a conference talking about some subject, be it sensitive or not, that can create argue or controversy. Unfortunately, this license is used for a culture regional lock, which does not do any good to those countries or groups of people that presumptively say that they spread culture. This one is unfortunately also used in prohibiting the translation of books, which is an obvious regional lock that looks like some half country's regime. The next one is the Creative Commons, followed by the parameters by-nc-sa, which means Creative Commons by attribution, non-commercial, share alike. This one is actually ludicrous. If I let it sink further, I mean, look at it. Oops, let's carry on. It basically forces the attribution of the author, does not allow making money of it, and this is the ludicrous part, because the NC part nullifies the -sa, and you are forced to share the work with no benefit whatsoever. Even Cambridge does not see the point of this one. So when I saw the ludicrosity of this, I wasn't alone, doggone it. The conclusion is that any work with this particular set of CC parameters is the basically same as CC -by-nc. The essay is just the author wanting to annoy the crowd for added bonus, I guess. For the new authors that want to use this, just change the NC into an SA in the CC-BYNC, and it's a win-win situation. The old ones just adhere to one of these licenses already, no matter which one. The next one is CC-BY-NC-ND, which means Creative Commons by attribution, non-commercial, and non-derivatives. This one is plain and simple and no fuss. The original author has 99.9% of the rights except distribution of the work. The recipient is not allowed to modify and to make money off the work. The author has all those rights, including attribution. No modification means no relicensing either. I am again stressing this fact. This is valid for the standard copyright licenses also. Basically, this one was specifically meant for the people already in the standard copyright realm, so that the user have the right to acquire the work through any means, check it, and decide to buy it or not, under even some other types of license agreements from the original author, or to be a fan of the author or not, without the involvement of our dear Protectron friends, their pink associates, or the authorities in general, such as the COPS, of course presented in the first slide, the right picture. The conclusion is that the works under this license do not attract fines or prison time for just not buying the work, but can result in such legal penalties for infringing the rest of the license conditions. So, as some conclusions regarding these Creative Commons licenses, please, I want you to differentiate between non-commercial and share alike, because many people are making their works in a non-commercial license because they think that nobody is going to take advantage of their work, which they gravely mistake. So, again, I reiterate, please differentiate for those people that are considering Creative Commons licenses and they don't know quite well the difference between non-commercial parameter, which is NC, and the share alike parameter, which is -SA. So please differentiate between non-commercial as in the following statement: I don't want anyone to profit in any financial way but me, that means you, the one that makes the work, and absolutely no money can exchange hands involving my work, including any humanitarian activities which involve acquiring money, such as even donations. You people do not realize that even donations are forbidden in a Creative Commons -NC type license. As again in I am selfish, and since the law allows it, I can even take your human rights in the countries that allow it. This is what NC means. It is made specifically for the people from the standard copyright licensing realm to consider adopting and entering in the this type of licensing, and share alike as in the following statements. I want that everyone touching my work to be able to profit of my work, and any new idea derived from the work to be shared with the rest of the community for further profitable advantages for all that touch the modified work also, or as in, I don't want anyone to solely profit of my work financially and leave the rest of the community out of it by suing everybody else involved with my work or the derivatives of it. This is the -SA parameter. The same happens with the non-derivative, which is the ND parameter too. Make sure you understand these parameters well. Of course, as I said in previous clip, we are going to talk also about some misconceptions of the free licenses, which I of course treated in the previous slide regarding the Creative Commons. So, a misconception of the GPL version, whichever you want, is as follows, and I quote, you are seeing this on some type of forums. If it is free, I can do whatever I want with it, including relicensing the material. No, because you will restrain the crowd, not empower it. Thus, you will restrain yourself from becoming better by making the rest fearful. It is free under the condition of being free. Further down the line of distribution, the money you charge are optional, and only when the others want to give money for the modifications made by others to the GPL version whatever, or the appropriate modifiable Creative Commons work. There are other licenses that specifically allow the use with that mindset, such as MIT, BSD, or other similar licenses, but there are some conditions there also, and reading is needed of the terms and conditions for those types of licenses, which I will not cover unless absolute major force is required. The most important aspect to the so-called quote-unquote piracy problem is that many ill-intended users subscribed and connected to different music platforms. So as you see, we are going to cover the media content such as SoundCloud, Google services such as YouTube, including streaming services such as Twitch, which this one is a part of Amazon, I believe, and many more out there. Start to relicense copyrighted material, appearing as relicensors or resellers in the layman's language, cascading all sorts of problems for the general public and for free software communities in particular. In this case, the free speech activism is overturned at this point, and we have crimes committed by these users, which, if verified, they are about a quarter to almost a half on each content platform. The content report options do not cover the situation when users find copyright content and they are not the original author. I will give two fast examples. On the SoundCloud platform, I find more than often the following situation. If one goes to SoundCloud and types a relevant title in the search bar, selects a type of commercial use, Creative Commons license, and waits for the results, we'll see no legal difference between the rightful owners of the works and the ill-intended users. As a quick example, we all know that Madonna, Kellys, Lady Gaga, Kesha, Justin Timberlake, Justin Bieber, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Deadmau5, Nina Kraviz, and Michael Jackson's or Avicii's right owners and other established standard copyright licensors through their publishers do not, I repeat, do not give anything for free or condone their works being used for free, because they can, and as long as the law says so, they will impose their will even in the countries that have corporal punishment for breaking such laws. And it's their right to do so in the end because of the written law. The YouTube platform has the same problem, of course. If one searches any titles under the Creative Commons license, the result will be the same, and many ill-intended users that work in an official capacity for different authors, entities, and publishers check the Creative Commons option and they even write in the description that the work is copyrighted and all rights are reserved, and the usual threats if not in compliance. By checking the Creative Commons option in the process of uploading the video. This is a special case where the intention is clearly to mislead, and this type of license misuse is actually a felony in any Berne Convention signatory country. Many people just put a shovel in the CC bucket and just put whatever pours out of the shovel and sticks on the work. Then they say, I quote, "Copyright infringement not intended. Thus, please do not delete the account." Well, your account is going to be deleted at some point. I guarantee you that, because you knowingly commit a felony. Of course, in the description is this type of quotes for the posted infringing work. This happens on all platforms, not just YouTube. So, we need to present some solutions, because everybody can see problems, but nobody seems to see some solutions. Nobody seems to offer some solutions. So I thought I'm going to offer some solutions. So, users need to stop relicensing the copyrighted work that themselves don't own on different platforms, or they don't have the permission to relicense because of the CC parameters given by the original author or rights owner, like the NC parameter or ND parameter, or other impediment imposed by the free or non-free license under the original work was published up the chain. Users can still publish copyrighted work works according to the law's conditions without the unauthorized relicensing or sublicensing of the published work. The conclusion is that relicensing a work you don't have the rights to into another type of license is a deliberate felony, and the quote-unquote copyright infringement not intended, etc., do not hold anymore in the court of law. Being a quote-unquote fan of some work or artist does not excuse the felonies being committed by you when deliberately relicensing a work that is copyrighted and the rights holder did not give you permission. So, as I said in the previous clip, I was going to talk about how the free software is sabotaged through the open source movement and the open source communities. Well, the fake ones at least, because that's why it is quoted in this slide. Because the real open source and the real free software community does not do such things. But I am going to present at least 7 types of sabotage attempts through this environment. In the end, it happens through the environment, not through the true open source communities or free software communities, but unfortunately through the environment, through the medium, which is as bad as it gets. So there are 7 types of sabotage attempts through this environment, and the first type is on the forums dedicated on the subject. The dilemma of some users with fresh accounts that post is that, quote unquote, if the software has a free license such as GPL, V, whatever, and pretends to be free, why can I not relicense it in a draconic license of my choosing? Because the license says the software is free, right? And other posts analogous to this one. Of course, the answer is that if something is originally free with a free license, for the freedom to last, it is needed that the freedom continues throughout the recipient chain of users. But sidetracking continues on those forums just to annoy the free software community. The second type of sabotage is through what is called quote-unquote tainted code, which usually gets spotted just in time so that not too much harm gets to be done by the true free software or open source communities. The third type is done through the means of quote-unquote loose license terms, which is more damaging because the law in 99% of the cases consider that what is not a written agreement does not exist. The means, and or verbally recorded. The means in which is done is with the use of verbal permissions, which are revoked at a later time when the work was used so much by the licensee that the damage is significant. As an example, someone makes a musical work, posts it on a platform, someone else asks permission, gets it verbally, uses the work for a long time in his or her own work, posts it on different platforms, and when that someone else makes money or not, of the new modified work, the original author abuses the civic rights and orders the removal of the work from the derivatives of the licensee. And since the law allows that, the damage can be significant, if not total. These types of sabotage are done on many platforms such as YouTube, Twitch, SoundCloud, GitHub, or other platforms where users interact to do a single or more projects together. The fourth type is done in the countries that allow software patents, because even if the software is open source, it may or it will, depending on the case, infringe the patents filed by different people, and the recipients of the software can have a really serious legal difficulties with this, like prohibition of using the software. The fifth type is plain old corporate muscle flexing, and an example that comes to mind is the Sony Corporation, where they used an optional Linux functionality on the PS2 game consoles, and they imposed standard copyright ownership on the software. It happened with the PS3 console also, and this particular case shows greatly what it was discussed in the third clip that I posted on this platform about the total control these corporations want instead of the legal ownership of the intellectual property they rightfully own. Read about the quote-unquote Linux Yellow Dog distro and the PS3 George Hutz quote-unquote GeoHot case on the internet. Of course, there are other means to sabotage in this manner. Of course, the last two cases that come to mind that deal with free software and open source are the Linux Red Hat and Ubuntu Pro situations, the latter being the worst. The sixth one changed the model from the optional payment agreement for the Linux distro update to a pay-only model agreement, which is totally against the free software licenses that the software is based upon. The seventh case, which is the Ubuntu case, is worse than the previous because two foundations are involved in the circuit, and Canonical, which was and still is the custode of the Ubuntu operating system, circumvented both of them just because some people simply could do that with their mindset. Of course, we need to mention the time when GNU and open source, which is GNU and Linux, or GNU/Linux, were about to separate, and everything would have disappeared or would be seriously dysfunctional now. For the first case, the solution is, because of course we need to present some solutions for these 7 cases that we presented. For the first case, the solution is to keep the truth going for the people that want to hear the truth. The rest at least need to obey the written law. If we as people are not truthful, at least regarding the plain technical terms, and we let others twist matters from obvious condition terms of a license into alleged or opinionated word salad, the free software will cease to exist like other movements throughout history. An example would be the Epicureanism, And if this happens to free software, we lose the only example of a tangible, proven functional set of freedoms, I dare to say biblical freedoms, in modern times. Who made the Wikipedia, by the way, article about the philosophy of Epicurus, where it is said that the philosopher searched exclusively and excessively the pleasure, is not correct. He searched and found the three motives of what actually makes a person happy, aka content, regarding the obvious things like money, power, and bodily pleasures. You need to read about the matter yourself. I am not going to cover it here. It was just given as an example of twisting some matters. Of course, the solution to the second type is already solved in part by the real free software and open source community members by actively auditing the code included in official repositories in the case of most of the software. There is a second part of this type of sabotage attempt that I haven't mentioned because of space limitation, which is by spreading infringing intellectual property through non-verified mediums such as forums or mail listing groups and other analogous means of distribution. The solution here the solution where we, the general public, need to contribute happens to be obvious too. The people need to scrutinize and to verify everything that somebody or someone pretends to give for free and to ask written proof of the origin of the said piece of intellectual property to validate the work as legally as possible in front of the law in case it is needed. That means you must have some written proof that you didn't infringe any copyright or patent under the law. The third type is solved like the second, with the addition that one must not trust verbal agreements that were not properly recorded on a medium to be eligible as proof in the court of law, and one must gather proof, be it photos, screenshots, or video clips, for each and any distinct material used under whatever license the work pretends to be provided, and keep that proof for further unforeseen incursions in the court of law. Careful questions need to be asked and recorded from the person, group, or authorized entity about the certainty of conversion from the standard copyright license to a free software license, be it GPL, Creative Commons, or other identical, when we are dealing with original content that is by default under the standard copyright license. After the successful authorized legal conversion of the work, the documentation must be kept at all times of the existing of the converted work, because of the future more profitably change of mind of the original author and or tertiary groups that are involved with the work. The fourth type is solved expressly by the GPL v 3.0 for software, and the Creative Commons 4.0 with its associated free parameters for the artistic or graphic content. Although this type of free licenses were implicitly built with this in mind, but since the court of law thought to distinguish the patent realm from the copyright one expressly as two completely different things. A lot of ill-intended people took and take advantage where and when legally possible of that particular fact and try to damage and still try to damage the free software and open source community as much as possible until this issue was officially addressed. Ill-intended parties, of course, still try to damage the free software and open source communities this way, but fail because of the solid stance that, as I said in a previous slide, many people take on this matter. The solution is obviously to use the licenses that cover the joint associated patents with the rights provided by the copyright whenever possible, such as the GPL v3.0 and Creative Commons with the appropriate parameters version 4.0. The solutions for the fifth type of sabotage can be mitigated by sanctioning those corporations and parts of the government that condone such unlawful behavior by publicly pointing at them through the many authorized associations that exist already, suing them and demanding a large percent of their true fiscal value, closing to 50 and over to 75% if they do it again, for starters, so they realize in the future that the company's owners or leadership can and will start over with less money without getting any younger themselves. Big and small companies that operate through the quote-unquote white-collar crime lawyers that condone in such type of behavior should be sanctioned, but also the people involved in it if the law is harsher that way. As physical persons, I mean, because a lawyer is a judiciary person, but he is also a physical person. The lawyers that adhere to such groups should be targeted also, and their very license to practice should be revoked forever when found guilty of taking a case they knew from the start it was foul. As addendum, as an example, the Sony PS2 and the PS3 GeoHot case were clearly an attempt to erode the free software and open source community slowly in years and to provide precedence to the judicial system in their favor as a war of attrition was made. I am sure that they had lawyers with discernment that thought this through, and those should be looked for to answer with their practice license by being revoked forever. Lawyers are considered invincible weapons and that was used heavily against the masses. But if that wouldn't be the case, only the correct cases and the adequate cases would be taken according to the written law in front of court. The PS2 Linux case was the licensed Trojan horse, while the PS3 Linux yellow dog was the corporation's muscle flexing and show of unjust power provided by the internal wealth and connections with the government, just like in the case of some other fruit we know from the time of Adam and Eve, but I digress. You will need to find Louis Rossmann on YouTube and other platforms to see what that's all about. Also, we could talk about the mad IDs while at it. about the free molestings that they had throughout the time, and didn't learn anything from those by messing with the wrong fashion in headwear garments business, at least when the material from which these are made is free for all to make and use according to them GPL license agreements. I suspect that they will have another, and they will learn nothing from it either in the end. I suppose I covered the other means section too in this last slide. Of course, the solution for the Red Hat case should have been the following. The way they crossed from one type of business model to another, completely different model, which for which this very license, their very free license, were made to defend us against. They should have done the following when they wanted to actually cross from one type of business model to a totally different one. First step, the team or group or leadership should have announced the world that they feel that the free software or open source business model does not work anymore for them. The second step should have to announce the community which were the affected distributions of the Red Hat based Linux distributions. The third step should have been to announce a deadline at which the support for those distros will be suspended because of non-agreement with the free software and open source business model and license principles. This fourth step should have been to suspend the support for the planned distros at the specified date. The fifth step should have been to archive and freeze an instance of the entire repository for each affected distro with the associated functional source code and documentations, while searching for available interested teams that could continue the development and update support for the distros. The sixth step, of course, would have been to forget anything learned about the open source technologies covered by the free licenses in the years of interacting, using, and developing with and around those materials and technologies. You find this in the EULAs. The EULAs actually specify that when you are not bound, when the bound by the license is finished, you need about 10 or 20 years in which you are not using the quote-unquote technologies learned. So it would be honorable to actually exercise this sixth step. The seventh step should be to officially announce the crossing from the old open source business model to the new proprietary business model. The eighth step and the final step should be to use the company money earned until then, with the agreement, of course, of the parties involved, to buy proprietary code base for developing something else of the team's new mindset, goals, and desires. This would have been simple, but they needed to break the Free Software Foundation's license principles because they got stung by the bug. Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah, totally. We shall discuss that at a later time throughout our journey. This was the 6th case, I believe, if math serves me right. In the case of Ubuntu, which is the 7th, and the last case we discuss in this clip, it is the worst because some incompetent lads managed to break two foundations' mission statements, and again, at the time of making this video, I am affected by this because the existing drivers are not updating correctly and the installed programs stopped functioning altogether since the quote-unquote pro idiocy which affected all the Ubuntu installations beginning with that version. The solution here would have been simpler than Red Hat's because they don't ask money for quote-unquote personal use. Well, that doesn't happen yet. Simply having another operating system variant such as, I don't know, Canonical OS Pro based on some other MIT licenses would have been sufficient, or partnering with Red Hat in their endeavor would have been an alternative. So they could have just buy some proprietary code base and do and follow Red Hat. So 1 to 5 steps from previous solution should have been taken if splitting the work to keep at least the very foundation on which the operating system's purpose was found. They could have let the Ubuntu the way it is, not break it, and they could have had another type of operating system based on proprietary code base, to follow through other types of much more paid type of business, I suppose. In this case, at least Mandela spins in the grave, and I hope he's brushless for Cuban Pete's sake, or Wendy's. Doesn't matter, because of the stresses involved by the screwed-up reality we blunted ourselves in. We could well be flying in the la-la land for suboptimal functioning of some of the pain receptors involved at least, but I've digressed, doggone it. And getting back to the solution for the last case, 1 to 8. The steps should have been if Canonical would have taken the Red Hat route. Damn, I've been kicked out from the Nexus. The conclusion is that people kill legacies that made utopias with defects and twisted those corpses into perfect dystopias. So these people took taxidermy to the next level. My idea is that we should fix that not so posh trend we're heading towards. Oh, I forgot that I have another subject to talk about, and I exceeded 30 slides. I was telling you in the last clip that I wanted to talk about the misused patriotism that we find in the internet world and in open source and free software environments. Of course, it is totally understandable that the language barrier between a nation exists and poses a significant problem, but since the internet with the massive associated culture has been invented and continuously nourished by the English-speaking demographic in general, I do believe that the convention of the common language that is being used since the beginning of IT technology should be at least respected on the platforms that speak that language. I know that there are words in different speaking languages that simply do not have a correspondent, and the English language itself is completely aware of that, and I firmly believe that other languages have this impediment as well. But at least myself do see a trend where historically conflicting nations that had problems with other nations that used English as a speaking language, and just to parade their separatist tendencies, they bust the free software or open source forums with questions that they actually need answers to for the purpose of solving their genuine problems. Note that I understood when this happened when I went on the forums that harbor users of this native language and I wasn't helped or being kicked out of. But this is happening on official forums which are known that the used language is English, is not only impolite but also rude. As an example, on some English technical forum, in some English conversations, you start suddenly see new users writing with some alien symbols of unknown origin and even demand undivided attention. Sometimes the symbols look Arabic, sometimes like graphics or flowers or other similar encounters from the first to fourth kind, but also found some of the Latin origin, and there I have started to see where the true problem lies. Sometimes moderators jump in to correct the problem, and one reason that ground my eyes was, quote unquote, I am not speaking English because that's the language of the colonialists from X area back 1 or 200 years ago, some many years ago, I don't know. He or she has a beef with. That of course proves the way they were taught to communicate with others by the education provided by their authorities. As a counterexample, as I said in the previous clip, I will give real examples if it's relevant. Imagine if Tahmid from EDA board forum would speak his native language, whatever that may be now, many people would mourn their guts. Let that sink for a minute. I never logged into that forum, but the fellow, with his explanation, big or small, gave a forumist's masterclass without even knowing it every single time. Those are the true people on the internet, not the pompous, egotistic. Let's end the sentence here, folks. The usual culprits are of Argentinian, Brazilian, sometimes Mexican, and different types of Arabian nations in general, but I have seen this type of behavior with some Cyrillic lettering users and other under a rock-based individuals in particular also. The solution to this problem, because as I said, we are providing solutions, is to understand when it happens and sanction this type of people when found acting against the very basic rules of conduit in a community of the free software, open source, or DIY makers or other analogous nature of these social environments. As a counterexample of this type of counterproductivity, we have the free software teams like Appio FPGA project with its graphical iStudio working environment and plugin system, Arduino development project with its multi-library based hardware and software compatibility system, mixed DJing program with its plugin system, Linux multimedia studio with the accompanying contributions from many cultures, from many different language speakers, Linux CNC with its plethora of contributions, and of course the elephant in the room, that is the GNU/Linux operating system project, which only by itself takes a multinational and multicultural effort from a significant chunk of the entire planet. And as a whole, we should mention all the free software and open source projects posted on different platforms such as GitHub or other platforms of this nature, such as SourceForge or others. As I said, I was going to talk about another subject that greatly affects and legally this time affects the free software community and open source community and the people in general, is that the non-cooperation of copyright management associations with the masses. You need to be the lawyer or the representative of somebody that has a specific creative work. As stated, the copyright management associations do not cooperate in a fast and appropriately efficient manner with the very general public that seems to be able to spot copyright infringement in a much less time than highly paid lawyers that in many circumstances are not even up to date with the terminology used in the digital world. If someone spots infringing material on a known official platform, the person or automated environment cannot file a complaint unless the work is produced by the plaintiff themselves. As an example, if a person posts a Madonna remix or whoever, I am not taking on Madonna here, on SoundCloud under Creative Commons, I cannot ask SoundCloud to verify the issue because I will get my account closed. It can be Justin Bieber or deadmau5 musical work. I don't target Madonna, so chill. A user has absolutely no means of reporting these types of felonies to the proper authorities. YouTube has the same problems, if not worse. Until now, I discussed about multimedia content platforms and the authorized people that are legally responsible for copyright, but the software side of the business has the same problem. And I am talking about our lovely and only friends that we have on this level at BSA, aka Business Software Alliance. The problem that BSA has is as follows: impossibility for general public to report with immediate resolve on authorized selling of known popular software such as proprietary operating system distributions, video editing software, and other types of software that is sold on platforms such as eBay, OLX, and other platforms of this nature. The platforms, as usual, do not do anything to the infringer, and usually the reporter gets a partially or totally blocked account for a half year or more. Of course, that by now we know that these so-called quote-unquote anti-piracy organizations are not interested in defending the genuine rights of IP owners, but to discredit the free software world by sabotaging the differentiation and the constitutional right of choice of one of the two sides, proprietary aka fans and the free software aka free world. For more details and as an example, please read about the ASCAP proposal to all its members to sabotage the free software licenses such as Creative Commons and others similar, such as the GPL licenses, and see how that went even for the members of such organizations. The conclusion is that was an epic fail and brought the bad notoriety and credibility loss of the organization itself as to other similar organizations similar to ASCAP, although the other organizations tried to mitigate the damage by declaring a so-called disagreement with ASCAP's stance, at least officially. Of course, what are we going to yap about next? Probably about the scam commercials that appear in a video on YouTube. If the time permits, maybe also about the inappropriate podcasts allowed on SoundCloud for young audience to access without logging in for age verification, and standard copyright licensed material which a minor must not get exposed to because of limited discernment and understanding of the law according to the same law. Maybe about Creative Commons license sabotage examples, like real ones in the online, not just quote-unquote alleged ones, even on YouTube where the same thing happens. On other platforms too, maybe, if we don't lengthen the discussion on 44 slides again. Oh, we're definitely gonna talk about the disastrous state in which the free software and open source community is in. I should probably start the real deal now. The real purpose of this, of the reason of this joint, you know. Well, we'll see. So, in the end, as usual, you have the right to comment, to subscribe, or not to comment, or not to subscribe. It is your choice. So, bye now.